Sheryl Lynn. Joy. Where is joy in your life? Do you think about it often? Do you have time for it? Do you celebrate it? Cheryl has a remarkable past history, youth. She was struck by a baseball and her nose broke her nose, and she pretty much hid for many years, for 20 plus years. And she didn't join any clubs or kind of, like I said, hid. And she had some other epiphanies happen. And then it just came to a point where she found joy, and others around her, she tried to help find joy there. And she has this organization now, a movement that just tries to spread joy. She has this chair. You heard me right. It's a chair that she encourages everyone to find. And there's 4 steps of finding joy when you're in that chair. I'll just tell you the first 2 right now. You're going to learn the other 2 there, but it's sit, and the next one is breathe. But to find joy, she's moved this movement. She's moved it to cities. She goes on stage. She talks to people. She puts CEOs in the chair. She has podcasts. She has YouTube. Her goal is to have 8 billion people on our planet recognize joy and celebrate it. It's a wonderful, wonderful movement, and she's a joy to speak with. You're really going to like this conversation. She tells some stories that are just heartbreaking, and how she arrived at this point. Really cool conversation with Sheryl Lynn. Thank you for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Recording Sheryl Lynn, thank you so much for your time today. Really, really excited to talk to you. So, why joy? Why not delight? Why not jubilation? Why not triumph, exaltation, rejoicing, happiness, gladness, glee, exhilaration, abundance, exuberance, elation, euphoria, bliss, ecstasy, rapture, radiance, ravishment, or pleasure? Why joy?
I got to ask you the same question. Why discipline? But yes, I don't know, because it's something that I was told my whole life, that happiness is and joy. Why can't you just be that? Right. And I always thought, well, I don't know why I can't just be that. It's something over there for other people. And so I really just settled into lots and lots of research that came out in the 90s about joy and how it's transforming trauma victims. And I really just focused on the word joy. And I decided that if we raise the vibration of joy on the planet, what would the world look like?
It could only be better.
Right?
It could only be better. You tell the story of being in the sandbox as a child, get hit with a baseball by your brother. I'm not sure if it was malicious or not. You don't kind of say, but you do
Doesn't
anyway.
it?
And you pretty much hide for the next 30 years.
That's what happened. I remember I was about 11 years old and the spirit of my joy just slipped away.
Mm.
And I said, "You know what? Where'd it go? And why is it so elusive?" I don't know if you heard the NASA study where it was a genius study that NASA did to bring people into the space program. I don't know if you're familiar.
No.
Uh, but they basically tested, they were looking for the most creative, fantastic, genius people on the planet. And they had adults go through this and they scored so low, like 2% creativity genius, but they gave the same report, the same test to children, and children scored like 95%.
Wow.
And then at 15 years old, it dropped down to 52%. Their creative and genius just slipped away.
Hmm.
And as adults, it's like 2%. So I think that the education, the way we're raised, how we're raised, the timeout chair, which is one of the things I'm out to replace with the chair of joy, is really detrimental to our human spirit. And I'm looking and excited to bring a very simple framework back to all of us, all the 8 billion people of us is my vision that know the words chair of joy. And by the way, you and I, this health thing, oh my gosh, 100 and what'd you lose? 100 pounds? You were 340? What? Sorry, this is not about you, but I just want to say, wow.
Yeah, you just thank you. But, it's interesting how, yeah, that timeout chair, that conjures such a vision of being put in the corner and put in a chair. I know when I was young, I played soccer, and when we were punished, the coach said, "Okay, you're gonna run." And so then all of a sudden we start equating, exercise and running with punishment and
Wow.
with non-positive things. So it's interesting. I never kind of thought of that. If you're sitting in a chair, you're being forced to sit in a chair in a corner, you start accompanying being in a chair with non-positive things. It's a very interesting connection.
It's literally a form of imprisonment.
Hmm.
Like, just put you over there and focus on what's wrong, what's bad, what was all the things, forget out the window everything this child did all morning long that was perfect,
Right.
right? So, quick example story. I put my granddaughter in the chair of joy concept when she was unruly and going crazy and, just having her thing. She was 4 years old, right? How about you sit over here in this beautiful chair I had set aside for her? And instantly, like literally whatever the tantrum or the thing was about, the only thing I said to her when she sat down in the chair was, "What was the most fun thing we did so far today?" And she instantly shifted. So the science behind the framework, sit, breathe, think, feel, is so deep and profound and long that there's no, it's giving them the tool without really having to explain anything. So again, I worked 30 years to get to this minute,
Mm.
and I appreciate being on the show today and talking about the chair of joy. And if you want to go through the experience, I'm happy to share it with you.
Please.
Really? So have you had a busy day so far?
Oh, you're talking about the experience with me. It's interesting.
Yes.
I've heard you go through this with many people. It's fascinating. But one more point on really the kind of so I lost all the weight when the doctor told me you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So it's like I don't know, come to Jesus, whatever you want to call it. But you had uh 3 years without your children, and you were in a custody type situation, and you broke down, and then the next day it was just kind of cleared up, and it seems to me your life just took a very different direction at that point.
Well, it did start to, like, the door open to having my kids back, and I gave it a lot of credence. I'm like, "Why did that just happen?"
Hmm.
Right? And I think there's a lot to letting down barriers and resistance and, opening yourself up and aligning with about the things that you want and need. But there had to be a systematic approach for me because I had alcoholism. I had, this punishment and so much going on in my world that I wanted to get back to feeling better quicker, and
Mm.
I didn't want to think about it quite so hard. So that's why over the years, after that event where I got my children back, I started giving it a lot more research and understanding behind what it was really that happened. And what could I do to use it and feel better more often in shorter amounts of time? So now it's like my days, the goal for all of us on the team and the people that we're serving in corporations is to get us to us. I call it a state of living joyly. Like, how do we, joy is good. Like, if we get to this feeling of, this birthday party joy or this Christmas joy,
Mm.
which I think a lot of people strive for every day, all day long. Sometimes they get there, maybe just deep breaths, or they go out in the garden or a bike ride or whatever the thing is. And that's a sense of it. But how do we get back to it every day, all day long? So you're living in more of a state of living joyfully. So you can get to quicker decisions. So you can make more money. So you can be plugged in when you go home at night and you're not feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and filled with chaos and this hustle that
Mm.
everyone goes through. It blows me away. Like, is that what life's about? Just the constant go, go, go after it? So I don't think that that's the way. I mean, I love working. I'm super driven. I love to be in conversations like this all the time. But I also think if we had a chair of joy and we could actually stand up and move away and go over there for just a few minutes and use the experience and come back. Imagine if the president of the United States started his meetings like this. And
Mm.
that's one of my goals, is to bring the chair of joy and the whole phenomenon to the United Nations, and when they start a meeting, and what different conversation might we have at the higher levels? So
And for those listening, it's remarkable what you have done because you got a literal chair. I think it's like 6, 7 feet, and you bring it on stage, and you have CEOs. There's videos up on your YouTube channel of it. You have CEOs, you have people coming. You take tours throughout the United States, and you bring this along. And it was a tough time at the pandemic, but you put it in your van. You left Las Vegas, and you went to these cities, and these crowds get together, and you go through this exercise with the what seems to me the pure purpose of just uplifting, of just spreading positive energy and joy. It's remarkable, Cheryl.
Joey, may I call you Joey?
Sure.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for recognizing the work that it took to get here.
Yeah.
It's been 3 years of focused energy to get people to hear this conversation. And you just summed it up in 1 minute like no one I ever have ever spoken with. So wow. But yes, I did buy a chair. My husband, my family, everybody said, "Why this bling bling chair? It's got
Mm.
diamonds on it. It's white. It's leather. It's if you haven't seen it, it's if think of Santa Claus's chair. It's something like that, only it's for the people. Like I don't think Santa Claus is the only one that gets to sit in a fancy chair of joy. So I took it on the road. I've been to 120 cities. About 10,000 people now know the word chair of joy. They're starting to implement it in their business. One woman walked past her own chair of joy. So I like to say any chair, anywhere, anytime, right?
Right.
So I've transferred this bling bling chair into making sure every single human has their own chair of joy.
Yeah, and you've worked very hard to kind of create this exercise with you mentioned before, it's just kind of four simple verbs that really, and you go through this process with everyone that does it, and it's just absolutely remarkable. Do you think there'll be a point where you'll add another one?
Another word?
Another word, there's four now, yeah.
I don't think so. I think sit, breathe, think, and feel, and we're turning those into little iconic pictures for children. So when
Mm.
they sit on their chair of joy, which their chairs of joy are now, I'm actually doing a big presentation to a mental health facility in Florida, and their tagline is "Kids' Minds Matters." And so the chairs will say "Chair of Joy" on the seat, and then the sit will be a person sitting, like little like people sit, breathe, think, and feel. Celebrate might be the only word that I might add at the end of
Mm.
that. There might be a celebration of, I now know what it feels like to give myself permission to sit in the chair of joy, do these 4 little steps of sit, breathe, think, feel, and really come out in 60 seconds on the other side, feeling better and doing better for everyone that they're encountering with. So knowing that they have their own power to do that, I would think celebration would be pretty phenomenal uh, gift to all of us to bring together. And we have a lot of that in the work, so we can talk about that too.
All too often, in business, we have not just in business, we have these goals, we meet the goals, and you just shove on to the next goal. We don't take
Yes.
time to celebrate, to soak it in for the moment. Like you say, it's just hustle and it's hustle, and you know, taking notice I just breathed in, just taking the time to celebrate that is really important. And when you first came upon when you first decided on these four steps, how did you put it into practice?
Well, for the first year of thinking about, so Joey, the one thing that I did after the trauma and the divorce and all of that thing, as I put together a women's organization, and I started watching people, and I couldn't really follow this thing about selling everyone everything,
Mm.
and forgetting who we are as human beings. And so I actually had hula hoops that I put in front of the room, where the women would walk up to the hula hoop and stand in the hula hoop. And the only thing that they could say in that was like the rule: you don't get to sell us something. You just get to be human in the hula hoop.
Mm.
And so the chair of joy started unfolding that way. And I'm sorry, I forgot what you asked me. What was the question?
Once you found these, you decided on these 4 steps, how did you put them into practice?
So, as I was saying, that I've just been interviewing people all over the country for a long, long time. And I started noticing that when I got people to sit down, even if I was
Mm.
on a bar stool or in a restaurant, I could get them to sit down, and I just asked them to
Hmm.
take a deep breath. And I'm just like, can we just settle into this being present with each other? And then I'd ask them about a moment of joy, and they would tell me something fabulous about their life. And the both of us felt it. Like there's this concept of transference, where when you have a deep connection, you really tap into each other's vibe. And I noticed that I was like, wow, if I have a superpower, that's it, right? And so I started talking to just my coaches and everybody who's on our team. It's like, how do we make this long thing that I keep talking about so simple? And then that's when the words
Hmm.
sit, breathe, think, feel came into play. And I worked with a Teresa Rose. She's one of my amazing coaches and friends, and supporters, and she calls it crystallize your brilliance. She writes it on a napkin, like, all this stuff you do, how can you say it in a very, very short and easy way so the whole world can understand? So keeping it simple, right, is what I think that a lot of us miss in our presentations. Somebody just told me they went to an event, there was 35 hours of material.
Wow.
What? How do you implement 35 hours of material into your day? It blows me away.
And it's a great symbol to be in a chair. And just because, I coached my daughter's soccer when I was young, when they were younger, I coached them in soccer, and we'd have a new season when they were in the kind of town league, and there'd be all new girls. And so for our first kind of get together, we'd all sit kind of in a circle, and I'd give somebody the soccer ball, and I'd say, okay, you have the soccer ball, only the person with the soccer ball can talk, introduce yourself, tell us one thing we don't know about you. So it's kind of giving them the power to be themselves, talk a bit. And I think that's what the chair does. It just kind of it makes you focus. Okay, I have certain rules now because I've been given this honor, this I don't know, reward,
Gift,
and I
gift.
kind of need
Yes.
this time, and I'm going to obey, and we're going to follow through. I'm going to divorce everything else in my thoughts and do that. I think it's very powerful. The actual chair itself. How did you come up with the actual chair?
So the chair, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's the physicality part of it. And also the understanding and knowing that when you have your own chair of joy in your house, you walk by it, it
Right.
annoys you. Like, there it is. There it is. She said to sit in it more often. Oh, okay. So yeah, it's a little bit annoying to people, which is fun at first part. It takes them usually 2 to 3 months before they actually go, I should probably sit in it, and then start seeing results. But the chair itself came because initially my success was in being still. So if I was still and I could be quiet and I could actually listen to God speak, or the universe or light or whatever it is, instead of my mouth going all the time, like, what kinds of things might happen. And so people would say, how do you get so clear and aligned? And I would say, I sit still. And so that's how it started. I went and bought the chair because it seemed like it had an opportunity for people to sorry, I had one other thing I had to get done today. It's because it seemed like if I asked people to do something physical, they could tap
Mm.
in with me and get present. So that's where it started.
And are you a practicer? Do you practice meditation, journaling, or journaling?
I've always been a fan of both of those. I never really thought I got meditation right. And I love everything YouTube. I listen to all the stuff, and use it to settle, and guided mountain meditations and all of that. But to just find myself to go inside and just tap into my own joy, like, I couldn't figure it out. I literally couldn't. But I people say, like, "I use a chair of joy, God's sitting on my lap," or "I'm sitting on God's lap," or so you can call it
Mm.
meditation, you can call it prayer, you can call it whatever you want. Just go sit in it.
Hmm. And when's the last time, Cheryl,
Yeah.
you were you were the subject of the exercises, of the 4 steps? Do people ever do that to you?
Yes, I my team and I start every single meeting with the
Hmm.
chair of joy, and it literally I need it more than some
Mm.
of them, I'm sure, but we've now made it a habit. So you don't know what stuff people come to a corporate meeting with, right? They're just all what was their weekend like? Was it good? It's bad. Like just recently, we did it at the beginning of a meeting, and I found out that one of my team's members' boyfriend, fiance, new fiance, had just left the country, and I couldn't figure out where she was until since we did sit, breathe, think, and feel. I asked her what her moment of joy was, and she said she just kissed her husband goodbye, and the tears started flooding. And how would we have known that if we
Right.
didn't stop and take a minute to pay attention to what was going on with her? And so we stopped and we celebrated him and where he's going and what's going the next time she's going to see him and all those things, right? It took a little minute, but we got there. And yeah, so over and over and over, when we do it 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day with each other, our team has become so close and so connected. Our communication is better. I mean, everything is increasing. Our
Hmm.
KPIs, like just knowing that our stakeholders are not only using this inside of our work setting, but they're taking it home at night. And they text me and email me all the time, like, "Oh my God, this happened, and I had to sit in my chair of joy, and so this, and then I did," and you could just see the ahas constantly coming in. It's absolutely amazing, amazing. Can I
Well,
tell you one quick story about Deanna, who
please.
used the chair of joy? So Deanna is an executive, and she's in California. She was one of those people who walk by her chair of joy often and never sat in it because people don't really think it works quite yet when they first learn or are discovered or given their gift of their own chair of joy. And she named where hers was. And that particular morning, it was a corporate event. She had a huge deal. I won't name the company, but it was a very, very large, very well known corporation in the United States. And she wasn't in her mind, right? We all have these things that go on in our minds. I'm not prepared. They're not going to like the news I have to share with them. I am downsizing of all the things to do. I don't have my makeup on quite right. Like all that was going on through her head, right? Because a big Zoom meeting. And so she said, walked past the chair, sat in it. She did her sit, breathe, think, feel. Thought of a moment where just recently she lost a bunch of weight. She got a lot of kudos. So she let that roll through her body. She stood up from her chair of joy and went to save this
Hmm.
$7 million deal. So she said, I completely attribute the success of that meeting
Hmm.
to the chair of joy.
Very, very cool. So let's go through the 4 steps.
Let's do it.
Sit.
Okay, sit. So once you've located your chair of joy, do you want to walk with me
Sure.
through it as you're doing it? So your chair of joy, let me ask you, Joy, where is your chair of joy? If you could stand up and take a moment away from your computer and go sit in a chair of joy somewhere in your house or office, where would
In
that be?
preparation of this, I did select one out in the foyer. It's kind of it's this cool kind of deck chair.
Very cool.
In.
Inside or outside? And comfy or sort of it
Not
feels
necessarily
good?
comfy, but kind of a cool, you wouldn't wanna sit in it all day. How about you? Where's yours? Is yours the actual chair?
Mine is the actual chair most of the time, but I find places like I have a deck chair outside. It's
Mm,
yellow actually, so I they move around from the woods to the bench to
mm,
the park to it doesn't matter. Just so that's a good one. So that's perfect. So I was just curious. I like to ask questions about your chair of joy because I like to get a
I
visual or
see.
a feel for what you're feeling when you sit in your chair of joy. So sometimes people say my chair's in the woods, or I'm looking out over the mountains, or I'm at the beach, or whatever the thing is. And so anyway, so number one, you located your chair of joy, and so that's cool. And now number two, step two, or the first of the four is to sit. And sit, when you actually physically stand up and you go sit in your chair of joy, a lot of things happen, right? You start to feel your the chair, the physicality of the chair, your butt on the chair, your feet on the ground. You instantly start becoming grounded, and all of a sudden you start thinking about, this is my time, this is for me, I'm worthy, I'm important. Wow, look at me for taking time to actually sit in my chair of joy. And so there's a lot of confidence just in the act of sitting. And I think what's the stat? 85% of us are standing in uncertainty and lack of confidence. And wow, if the chair of joy can bring you up even a notch in your confidence, then please
Hmm.
go sit down. So that's number one, sit. So there you are sitting in your chair of joy. And then next is to breathe. So, of course, we know that breathing opens up our serotonin and our dopamine. It fills up our lungs and the oxygen is flowing. We lose weight through
Hmm.
our breath, right? So, there's a lot of reasons that we probably want to take a deep breath. So, not only does it calm you down, which we're going to do in a second, but there's so many benefits to breathing. So, think of a kid, like the children's one, like deep breath in.
Hmm.
Breathe with me.
In through the nose, out through the mouth.
In through the nose, out through the mouth, or whatever works for you. There's no rules about this. So imagine a little child just taking 5 deep breaths as they go through their fingers like that. Maybe you just take 2 breaths and it's enough for you to go on to the next step. So I'm going to just take you through it. So here we go. We're going to sit in our chair of joy. Joy, take a few deep breaths. And while you're taking a few deep breaths, I want you to think about all it took to get to this moment of today, right? All the things, all the worries, the chaos, the hustle, if you will, which is fine in business. That's what we do. And just kind of let them all fall to the ground, right? They're now laying on the ground next to your chair of joy, and it's fine. They'll be there when we come back. So if you could reach over and pick up in your mind's eye just one of those things that's the most important thing, and I want you to see that in your mind. What's the most important thing of all those things? You don't have to say it, but if you want to, you can.
Sure. Communication with my daughter.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so let's just sit and in your chair of joy in that vibe. So we've taken a couple of deep breaths. We brought up the emotion of the thing that's most important to us, which is communication for you. And then we're going to think about a moment of joy. So let's stay with that through line if you don't mind. So let's think about a moment of joy that feels really, really good around communication with your daughter. So if you want to close your eyes and tap into a moment, that would be cool. Where would be a moment of communication with your daughter? Maybe you were on a trip recently or at the pool or
Her sharing a great experience of grading well in an exam.
of grading well
Mhm.
on an exam. Lovely. And your communication or your reaction to that was? Tell me a little
Joy.
bit more about the memory. What did you say to her?
Congratulations. Great work.
Did you ask any questions about it?
Uh, how did the rest of the class do? How prepared were you? Are you happy with that?
Beautiful. I can feel what's her name? May I ask her
Olivia.
first name? Olivia. So I can feel the joy with Olivia and the beautiful and high level communication from from a father to a daughter. So that happens. I wish it happened more often, or the very least that we celebrated and thought about it again, and let the person know who's in our vision how very super cool and important that was to you to have this communication with them. So I'm going to take it one step further just because I love that you're loving this. But if you could expand that vision one step further in your mind to take that level of communication to something else with her. Maybe you could have said this or that or done this or that. How else could you have amplified this communication with your daughter Olivia in this moment? Is there another person you could have brought in? Is there a walk you could have took? Is there a moment you could have stopped and just really took it to the next level? You don't have to tell me, but if you could just, I'm sure there's a few things that are popping in. And whatever that is, I want you to feel that in your entire body. Like literally drop your arms to your sides and wiggle your fingers, tap your toes on the ground. And for me, it's often goosebumps or the hair follicles standing up on the edge of my arms as goosebumps, or I rub the back of my head and I let that feeling roll in. And that's the last part, the feeling, that the science of the feeling. Well, you can open your eyes whenever
Yeah.
you're ready, Joey. Did you feel that? Did you feel the goosey
Certainly,
bumps?
certainly. I think it's what we talked
Yeah,
about earlier, celebration. I need to tell her to
yeah,
celebrate a little bit more on
yeah.
those instead of worrying about the next one like she does. I know she does.
Oh, for sure. So what we did there, that the 2 that I kinda skipped over because we were moving through the experience of sit, breathe, think, feel, is the think portion is my favorite and the most important because I am very visual, and we have to feed our right brain flows to our left, and we have to sorry, our left brain flows to our right, and so we don't all often feed that part of our brain. We don't take time to visualize and build symbols, and therein lies success, is when we take time to stop and go, "What is really important that I need to pay attention to?" And when we do that, we elevate, just joy, like you said, and we start feeling it in our body. And once we experience that euphoria, or that amazing feeling that runs through our body, it's I'm not a scientist or a neuroscientist, but I work with them, and there's a lot of research about what that does to our body. So it is powerful if we can understand how to do it and do it more often.
Do you have a specific goal with, well, let's talk about Joyly is your company, which is an event and media company. Like, do you have a, like, what's your mission?
Our mission is that all 8 billion people know the wonder and awe of the
Mm.
chair of joy. Literally. What is it going to take for I think it's 464 children to one guidance counselor. What is it going to take for every guidance counselor to have a chair of joy in their office, or 17 of them on campus? How do we bring this to seniors and veterans? I'm going to New York City in February, and I'm talking with some of the most profound um, millionaires and billionaires who are leading these philanthropy movements around mental health and the issues that are you know facing us in the World Health Organization says we're in a global mental health crisis. Like, what are we doing? So yes, the vision is that I think that the chair of joy is, and I know I'm the visionary, but I also think that it was given to me from all kinds of sources and all kinds of coaches and educators through my entire life. And so it's a culmination of an experience that I think is going to change how we raise our children. So when we raise our children, we change the world. But I also do think that businesses will be impacted, or they already are. We already are in working with hospitals and mental health facilities and bringing this home. But I do think I think it's a worldwide movement. And my vision is that a yellow and white world starts to come upon us versus a black and white versus and red and blue. That yellow and white can really be the dominant vibration in many of our meetings and events.
Now, is there always room for joy? I mean, what if it's just, there's just calamity that day, or, there's it's not there's always troubles. There's always things going to happen. Is
Always.
there always room for joy?
There is always room for joy, but it isn't what we're doing here. Like, I think that sometimes people think, well, if I'm not in a joyful utopia mode, then I can't
Mm,
talk to Cheryl. And this is intimidating to a lot of people, especially if you're starting out in shame. Like, I have friends and relatives around that are in shame every day. There's a lot of diagnoses is going on in that. And so the answer to your question is no. We get to be whatever it is we are every day, all day long. Joy at some point might be the thing that we arise to, like you mentioned, that we're more in a state of living joyly. But if we can go to shame to guilt, that's a step. If we can go from guilt to a little less guilt, and a little less guilt to hope, and hope to courage, and then courage to, taking a first step, some action, maybe feeling a little more confident, then, as you said, gratitude, love, joy, as there's all kinds of things. But it does, for me, because I still have lots of trauma that comes up every
mm.
single day. I might not get to joy one day, but I do know that when I sat my chair of joy, I got a little bit better. And so that's one of our taglines is to feel better now. It's not feel joy now, but feel better now. So wherever you're at, you definitely can feel better.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement, and yeah, you're right. Somebody hearing this may think it's intimidating because look, one of my employees been with me for a long time. She just had to put her pet down, so it's going to be a tough week. A 15-year-old, relationship with an animal, and so I mean, but there is room for it, but it's just not always there. So that can be intimidating. But I think you just kind of wrapped it around eloquently that you just improve a little at a time.
Yes, I would sit her down, and I would look her in the eyes, I would embrace her, give her a hug, and I say, "Let's sit in the chair, Joy." Even if she doesn't we don't say the words, I might just
Mm,
sit her down and say, "Let's just take a deep breath together, and tell me one of your most favorite moments about your pet." But remember that one time, and she will think of something and she will share it with us, and we will feel it together, and she will feel a little bit better. It won't be perfect and it won't be over, and the grief hasn't passed, but she's definitely feeling a little bit better. And if she had that tool to do over and over again, it's likely she could move into a new relationship with the animal, right? So as I expanded you from, this was a great moment in communication with my daughter, but what if we expanded it just a tiny
mm,
bit and took her for a walk afterward and really what if we said to her with the pet, wow, imagine another moment down the road where you see another puppy and it's firing off memories for you, or you get a new pet at some point. Like, start planting those seeds and letting them do it themselves, not necessarily maybe the first week, but definitely moving them into a new relationship in the future with what it might look like with a pet or without a pet or a new pet or someone else's pet or something
hmm.
like that.
Very, very it's a huge undertaking, Cheryl, because I hear you in your interviews where you talk to these people and they unload on you with, some of the, you know, this one particular one where somebody's boyfriend just moved out of the country. I mean, to have that laid on you, I mean, how do you deal with that?
It's I am an
Mm,
empath, so it's taking a lot of takes a lot of practice. I spend a lot of time in the woods. I love to build fires and go camping. I do a lot of It's funny you asked that because I just watched a whole thing about Richard Simmons, and he was an empath too, and he
I could
brought
see that.
everything on himself, and for the last 8 years, he's just been
Mm,
hiding. And so I'm very, very careful of that. I sit in my chair of joy and I make sure that if I haven't ignited some level of something exciting for me during the day, I go after it. I'll take myself out and put myself in the kayak, and I'll just give myself time away. But yes, it is a massive undertaking, and luckily we have an amazing team that can speak very simply and as easily as I do to others, and that team is getting
mm,
stronger and stronger. So it's going to take. It's a movement. It really is a movement, and because we're changing and shifting consciousness around what it means to feel better and how to have to actually take that on yourself. So this types of things that I'm doing right now, thank you very much, are just I know the work that I will be doing for the rest of my life. And if I could give a level of success to it, if you will, it's that the Chair of Joy book for children that I've written, where kings and queens are in a castle and they don't have a chair, that they do have a chair. If this book could be in every classroom and the avatar, if you will, showing kids what to do and how to sit in the Chair of Joy, that would be
mm.
beautiful success for me, and know that I've moved a new generation to a new way of thinking.
What a wonderful anecdote. Do you think you could be where you were if you weren't empathic? I mean, I've spoken to empaths before, and it's just it marvels to me. That you feel the energy of others, be it positive or negative, and it's depending on your degree or your where you are in the spectrum. I don't know if there's an empath spectrum, but it's easier to guard off, and it's not. And could you do what you do if you didn't have that?
That is a really, really good question. I think there are some people that I talk to that have no feelings, and if when I ask them a moment of joy, they have 0, they have nothing for me, right? And I'll say, "Did you wash the dishes today? Was the sink clean?" So I think that I use a whole plethora of skills to get people to move, and, I think my level of empathy is helpful, and it's definitely a superpower of mine, but I don't think it's necessary to move people through sit, breathe,
Mm,
think, and feel. I mean, there's so many levels of where think of a child to an adult, or a husband to a wife, or a sister to a brother. Like, everybody is going to say it different, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. Not it's It feels like meditation. It's like, do this and this and this and this, and then if your mind wanders, get back here. It's like, sit a little bit, breathe a little bit, think about a moment of joy. It might be good, might not be not so good, whatever it is, and try to feel it in your body. And if you don't,
hmm.
that's okay too. And that's it. And so, yeah, I think we can all do it at different levels, and it's all perfect.
But to discover this process or this movement and to come up with those 4 steps, Was your, being an empath helpful in this discovery or this movement?
Absolutely. So yes, and let me tell you why. I cried a lot when I heard
Right.
stories like Brazil, and people have moved me to profound
Hmm.
um shifts in my own life. So for example, when the Douglas Anderson shooting happened in Florida, there were 17 deaths, and then Sandy Hook, and this and that. And right after Douglas Anderson, and whenever there's a mass shooting, I literally crawl in my bed for a week. I can't even imagine how something like that can happen. It blows my mind. But right after Douglas Anderson, I couldn't deal with it anymore. I sold my house. I told my husband he had to move, and we shipped him off with a truck. And I went on the road and I walked across America from Key West, Florida to San Francisco, about 1,800 total miles. I
Wow.
actually walked and then did some driving. But I I couldn't find the answer in all of that. I thought if I just ran away from all this, maybe then I would be okay and I could find my own joy. But I discovered after miles and miles and miles and miles that I longed for that connection like you do. Like communication is so important, and doing something for our world while we're on this planet is important to me, and I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what to do, and so I thought, well, I'll do nothing. Maybe if I'm better and I can heal myself, what is it? How does that saying go with it? First, you have to look inside and do your best work before you can help
Mm.
anybody else. And so, yeah, it took me a lot of steps to get to the place where, okay, I'm all right now. I can use the chair of joy. And so what's left over for others? And I'm able to gift that to others now. And I can look past the darkness and get to the hope a lot faster.
How wonderful. How wonderful. And again, you needed to take that journey or you needed to step away in order to discover that. Almost like you're creating this oasis with the chair where you're putting people in a position and making them separate from everything and focus on these four items.
It's a cognitive strategy. I don't know if you've ever
No.
heard of that before. Mel Robbins uses the 5-second rule. She counts down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take action on whatever the thing is you're thinking about and go do it before you
Hmm.
don't do it. Like it's that. It's a way for us to stop and think about what we're thinking. So for me, if I go through my day and I get somebody who who hung up on me or didn't want to hear the chair of joy story, God forbid, that rarely happens, but it does. I'm like, should I quit? What should I do? Right. And so it's just being self-aware and regulating what we have to do to get back to feeling better. So
And there's such degrees of joy because as I was thinking the conversation this morning and I was going through it, like, what's the best thing that happened? And at the time, the first thing I said to myself, well, it'd be the birdie I got on number 4 because I played golf this morning. So it could be something kind of small like that, or it can be something profound, like I had a long conversation with my daughter or a loved one, and so it's amazing to me that there's different degrees, which brings me to discipline. So the podcast, we talk about discipline, and you mentioned before I lost a lot of weight. People always ask me how, like there's some magic way, and I always say discipline. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Cheryl.
I love that word. And I also fear
Mm.
that word a lot because it feels like it takes away my freedom, right? And I've
Hmm.
I've often just been very spontaneous, right? And I just want to do what I do, and I want to jump and fly and run and boat and fish and hunt, or just do whatever I want to do, right? And so discipline seems like it's a word that takes that
Hmm.
away. And so I've been implementing it actually over the last year or so by taking on a new healthy routine. So I just lost a bunch of weight. I drink green juices. I focus on what it's going to take to make me feel confident every day. And that's discipline. And I was like, oh, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. I reframed a bunch of things. So instead of going to the gym and doing all these horrible exercises, I now go to the fair in my mind and I ride on these rides, even though it's
Ah.
the gym. I now ride on. I've learned to appreciate discipline. I've learned to set myself up for success as it comes to discipline. And, one thing I could do better at that is how do we ask or teach others
Mm.
about that? And using the chair of joy as a very disciplined tool or access point to your joy every day, all day long. How do we remind them? How do we set them up for success in that? Because that's, if there's one obstacle along the way, it's that I forgot, or it's not that important, or I didn't think it would matter, or those kinds of responses that people put their health or their joy on the back burner. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Does it take discipline to recognize or feel joy?
Yes, it's so again, our right left brain flows to our
Yeah,
right brain. So we have to feed our left brain to get it to our
interesting.
right brain. And so if you don't access golf and have a awesome shot, by the way, I went golfing last night too and had a
Nice.
similar shot. But if you're not doing the things to snap to put yourself in a place that feels good, you might not call it joy or even recognize that it was. But if you're not setting yourself up in the environments that are starting to cause you to feel good, if you're just plunking away at your computer 8 hours a day, unless there's a lot of success in that for you all day long, like great. But I definitely think that people have to work at putting those golf games or those beach events or those it's just something simple like taking a walk around the block or taking a drive down a new street or picking a flower and giving it to someone or calling a friend, whatever the thing is, so that you can feed that other side of your brain that activates the joy in yourself and your body, that then of course impacts everything
Mm.
you do.
So when you were younger and you had this I'll call it a tragedy happen when you got, your nose broken and it kind of shifted your perspective for so long. Did you consider yourself how you say you discipline was you fear and loved it. How was your viewpoint then? Do you remember? Just
About
discipline.
joy when
No,
I got broke
discipline.
my nose.
Yeah.
Discipline. Okay, discipline.
Do you consider yourself
um
disciplined when you were young?
I think so. I really do. I was I was so active and alive and ready for anything. I was adventurous. I didn't have any fears about talking to people. So, um, and then I
Mm.
didn't. And then I didn't. I think that I let my mind go to everything that was wrong. I was disfigured. My nose was actually broken for the next how many years before I fixed it? Probably 28 years
Wow.
or something like that. And I got rhinoplasty. So I didn't allow myself to function, let alone have discipline to do anything important. And to, I didn't join clubs, I didn't join teams. I just stayed away and kind of hid in books, and so I lost it. Everything about what you have when you're given, when you're birthed into this world, can be taken away from you if you're not disciplined about it, if you don't set yourself up or put a little bubble around this high level of what it is that you want in the world. So it's sad. It's sad. It's a very sad subject, actually. It makes me worry about all the kids that are I shouldn't worry because everybody's on their own journey and doing their own thing, but I do know that a simple little thing about that can, we're collaborating here, but sitting in your chair of joy and discipline to do so can impact people's lives
The
profoundly.
question was, can you find any joy from those 28 years?
Yes, because I believe that we are, most of what we learn in life is prior to the age of 5, right? And I think that my mom and dad were kinder then, and the all the things that you become aware of when you get older are still inside of you. So you carry those through the years. So I did find myself tapping into adventures. I did wild things, rafting rides, and I took myself out and found what it is that made me happy. I love to camp, and I met lots of camping friends, and I since got married and divorced, and I've done a lot. I've owned 3 businesses, and just whatever piece of our lives, we can always find joy.
Mm,
It's just a matter of tapping into those specific memories and those specific relationships and enhancing them. So maybe there weren't a lot, and that's okay, but the ones that are there, I maximize as often as I can.
hmm. Sheryl Lynn, what motivates you?
You giving you the chair of joy,
Mm,
letting people discover it and transform. When I see that transformation and the light goes on, like maybe I could use something different with Olivia next time and we could enhance that experience. Or maybe because that was so important to you, you're now aware that, oh, I got to do it again with her and pay attention to that moment. So when I see that or feel that from people, which I do every day, all day long, it's profound to me. And I look forward, I guess, probably what would motivate me is to get on a stage, more stages, and to have my team get on a stage.
mm.
I have one more quick story. Would you like to hear it? It's
Please.
sort of an imaginative story. So, when I was in Las Vegas about a month ago, I saw or heard about a stabbing. I don't know if you heard on in front of the Venetian. This gentleman who is from Guatemala came to Las Vegas and he was turned away by a friend and therefore was shut down and no job and all of that. And he was carrying his chef's knives. And he thought two of the showgirls on the strip were laughing at him. And instead of just walking past and letting it go, he took out his chef's knives and stabbed 8 people, killing two. And when I heard that, I was in the lobby and I was like, that was like across the street from me. And I went and sat in my chair of joy, and this is what happened. So first I was tearful because I'm an empath, right?
Mm,
I was very tearful. I was like, what the heck? This does not have to happen in our world. And especially this was across the street and 4 years later from the I don't know how many people died in Las Vegas just years before. It was a lot.
yeah.
Like was it a lot?
Yeah.
So yeah. So what I went and sat in my chair of joy was I imagined myself giving a stay talking in the Mandalay Bay to 10,000 people in their Coliseum, right, and giving them all the chair of joy. And I handed out these yellow and white. This is my vision. I handed out these yellow and white buttons, and there was a gentleman in the audience. His name was Paul, and Paul had a profound experience like you did, and he put the button on. And he was very proud of it. He's like, "Chair of joy, feel better now. I love it. I don't know what to do with it, but yay, cool." And then we went on and told him a bunch of stories, and he left the building. Paul went out on the strip. He's walking on the strip, and Yoni sees, sorry, the gentleman's name was Yoni that did the stabbing, sees his yellow and white button and the chair of joy, it says on it. And Yoni remembers that his corporate restaurant where he worked previous had taken him through the chair of joy. He had just forgotten about it. And when Paul walked by, he walked up to Paul and he taps him on the shoulder. He says, I need the chair of joy. I need it. And imagine the two of them sitting down on the Venetian steps and saying, sit, breathe, think, feel. And then Paul says, by the way, I work at the Venetian and we're hiring chefs. Please come in. And then a little while later, these 8 people, unharmed, walk in the restaurant and Yoni sees them and life continues on. You see, it doesn't have to be like that anymore. We can get an app or something that gets connected, gets us chair of joy people talking to each other and communicating and knowing how to show up for each other in the moment when there's a mental health crisis such as that.
That's wonderful, Cheryl. How do you measure success?
When I'm wearing sexy yellow and white clothing. I mean, I love what I do in business, but I also love myself. I pay attention to what success feels like, not what it looks like, what things that I have,
Mm,
or what cars that I want, or any of that. Success feels like I'm wearing my corporate colors that are yellow and white, and we're at a grand party, such as the Mandalay, and there's yellow and white decorations and balloons and people celebrating. That's what success looks like. It's getting people to feel this very energetic vibration around what it feels like to feel joy every day, all day long, as much as possible, anyway.
Cheryl, I love your energy. I love what you're doing. I like your podcast. It's very similar to mine. You're talking to people about joy, and you've got a lot of episodes out there, and you're talking to these authors and scientists, and it's wonderful. And your company, Joyly, aproposly named. Is that a word? Aproposly? Not really, but it's a wonderful name nonetheless. And it's event and media company, and pretty much your magazine podcast. Talk to me about love, Joyly.
Well, joyly is a word that we came up with, and it was just to kinda take the attention off the word joy,
Mm,
because I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood words on the planet, and there's a lot more people talking about it now. There's the Global Joy Summit coming up,
really?
so there's a lot of books being written, and I think that's so cool, but I also think that it's not wrong to not know what joy is, and so joyly is sort of an expansion of, you know, to just be okay with the not really knowing what joy is, and also knowing when you do get to it that it's possible to have every day all day long. And I think that there's a huge continuum, or broad spectrum, if you will, of where people fall on that, and it's okay. And so Joyly is just really a company that I'm excited about the merchandise that we're building. That, like, I don't know if you can see if I hold this up, but this is a mouse pad that says sit, breathe, think, and feel.
Mm.
Anything that you can put around your parameter to help you get back to your chair of joy is kind of what I see. So we have lots of things in store, and really want to highlight people who are using the chair of joy. And I kind of see it as a home party Tupperware thing as well. Like, what if Joyly had its own, tribe of people all over the world who knew how to facilitate these communications and this conversation with people? Like, what would that look like? And I have lots of dreams, but I won't go into all of them right now. So for right now, Joyly is just supporting the Chair of Joy movement.
And how can we it's that's wonderful as well. I mean, it all started from, from your youth, and like you said at the beginning of our conversation, that your whole life has been up to this point, and you've been able to it's so it's so wonderful to have people like yourself, because not only do you practice it, and your tight knit of friends, but now you've deciding to spread it to the 8 billion people. You want to spread it. You're not keeping this to yourself. You're spreading it out, and you're making it very easy to access. And it's the showcase of a remarkable person. Absolutely sure. How can we get in touch with you?
Well, joyly.com, joyely.com. And on the contact page is my direct information. And I want to talk to everyone. If somebody's struggling or feel like you're in a spot, like, I'm right here for you. And yeah, my email, my website, everything is right on there. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook. All those links are there.
Instagram as well. We'll put those all in the show notes. Cheryl, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that Lynn introduced us to each other, and what Bex was great. And I really appreciate your time. And I hope one day we can meet there out on the road and maybe have a cup of coffee face to face.
Joy, you are the highlight of my week. Thank you very much for being present with me and for really tapping into what this is about. And I appreciate you. And where are you in the world?
I'm currently in Tampa for the winter in Florida.
Very cool.
And you're,
I'll be wintering pardon?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Are you back in Wisconsin?
I am, but I'll be wintering in Panama City, so I won't be too far away from you.
Right on. Yeah. Thank you
Good.
very much, Cheryl. You be well.
You be well as well. Take care.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.